Hello from New York. This is Lee Ranaldo in New York.
Hi, and this is Lonneke from Amsterdam.
How are you today? We've been talking the last few days, and I heard you talking while I was trying to get in about the fact that our proposed performance at Pace Gallery here in New York was scheduled for the 12th of March,
Yeah.
and the day before pretty much is when everything shut down, and we decided to cancel, and we've been on lockdown ever since. So it's 5 or 6 weeks in right now.
Yeah, and exactly, I think the date of our performance, that is also the moment, yeah, that really marks for both of us the
Yeah,
complete change that we all
yeah.
went through. So,
Yeah,
uh,
in a way, it's still unfolding. Like we were saying before the chat went live, if if we knew right now that we were going to be inside for the next 6 months, there'd be a certain structure and ability to sort of schedule. But I feel like every day I'm still kind of wrapping my head around it and sort of being a little improvisational or something with my daily actions. I
yeah.
haven't
So
really
how,
come up
how is
with a
the,
firm schedule.
just to get a little bit of idea where you are, how's the situation in New York? What is happening? How is
Well,
it going?
everybody from friends from all over the world are writing because New York is always in the news as this epicenter where it's really, really bad. Mainly, I guess, because there's so many people here. But it's really bad everywhere right now, as far as I can tell. It's either still coming on in some places, or or it's slightly over the top of the curve in some places. But the streets are empty for the most part, and it's very unusual to be in New York like this. Someone was saying they noticed that there's a lot of people out on the streets just photographing because it's such a strange time, and there's no one on the streets. It's a rarity in New York. So I'm in downtown Manhattan with my wife and my college freshman son, and we're mostly staying inside, going out a little bit. You know, I was kind of taking all of this in stride for the first few weeks. And about 10 days ago, a good friend died from the virus, a
Oh,
music producer named Hal Wilner, who was a good friend and has been given lots of online tributes in the last week or so, deservedly so. And he's someone I've known for years, but that I'd been running into a lot in the last 6 months for some reason. Everywhere I was, Hal was, and we were hanging out and talking. And he's almost exactly my age, like a month or two apart. And when I heard that news, it just devastated me in a way that it made it feel much closer uh, to me and to my life than I had thought before. And this was about 10 days ago. And I think after that, I really sort of froze up for a little while. I didn't want to go out at all. I had been going out for regular bike rides, which is kind of a passion of mine. And I stopped doing that and pretty much stopped almost everything, and have just started opening up again a little bit. But it was a pretty heavy moment just to feel it coming that close. And since then, I know a few other people who have family members working their way through the virus. And um, I don't know. It's been a very strange time trying to figure out how to deal with this. You
yeah,
know,
no, absolutely. Yeah.
and
Well, I'm
and like
sorry to hear that of your friend.
yeah, it was really sad. And he was a real sort of a titan in the music community, longtime producer for Saturday Night Live, but a really eclectic, just a one of a kind of guy. And the fact that someone like that could be taken by this was really shocking to me in
Yeah,
a way.
yeah,
Um, so it's been, I feel like I have good days and bad days. It's again what we were talking about a little bit. Some days I feel like I start the morning with a good structure and get some things done and feel productive. And other days I just kind of ramble around, like wondering, how long we're going to be like this in a certain way. Um,
yeah. For me, that was something I was thinking about today. We constantly
where
like.
I let's see, let's talk about you for a second. Where are you? You're in Amsterdam.
I'm in Amsterdam. Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
I'm
In
pretty
in
much.
the city?
Yeah,
Are
I'm in the
you?
city. I'm in the city
Hmm.
center, and today I was on my bike, like very Dutch, going from A to B. Actually, I stay most of the time with a good friend in Amstelveen, which is very close to Amsterdam. But there's much more space. There is a huge park, which is almost a forest. So I go there very often, and that is, I feel I have a little bit more space there. But today I came back to my own house, and I biked through the Vondelpark, which is a big famous park. It's a bit like the Central Park of, yeah, the Netherlands.
I've biked through it many times.
Yeah, and I was surprised because it was so incredibly busy. It was like a busy summer Saturday, and the park was full of people picnicking, and you can literally, I mean, also since mid-March, since the start of this, I don't know what happened, but the weather has been incredibly good. It has been summer, 6 weeks already, and I understand that people want to go outside. I also feel like I want to go outside, but I got a little bit worried. But you see that, it starts to take long. It seems in our country to go better now, but still people are urged to stay home and to keep the distance. And I think it's very dangerous if we start losing up. But I understand it completely, because I also feel like, okay, we have to find a way to live with this now for how long it takes, and the waiting for information and not knowing what to expect. I think that's kind of starting to break up a little bit for everyone. So also the question came to my mind today, that I thought, like, what is my purpose if if this is going to be our life? It's a very heavy question maybe, but the goal of what I do, I think also what you do, but is to create situations where you are together with people, where people interact physically with what you're doing. And this whole online world is not what I'm looking forward to, not what I want. I think nobody, especially now, we're only watching on our screens the whole day. So it's very hard to imagine that type of life. I don't know how it looks like. I don't know if you have those thoughts, but
no, sure. And the interesting thing, I keep calling it the planetary pause. It's like the entire globe is stopped and staying at home to some degree, and it is a moment for reflection and for answering those, or at least staring in the mirror of those big questions. What is my purpose here? If you're stuck in home and you can't interact, what are we supposed to be doing right now?
Exactly.
And in a way, maybe just for everyone on Earth to slow down for a minute, stop jetting around the globe. I mean, there's certainly some useful sides to it. And I think we were talking the other day about, artist friends saying, like, well, this is great. I'm home doing things that I never have time to do, finishing projects, reading, kind of contemplating the future. But I think that's mainly kind of what I'm trying to push myself to do, is figure out how going forward, like, in a way, I don't really hope things will just go back to normal at some point. I think that would be a big mistake and a tragedy in a way, if everybody, I think big corporations are hoping that at some point they'll just rev everything back up and we'll go back to normal. But I don't see how anybody can go back to normal with this kind of thing happening.
What do you want to do different now that we're experiencing this? Is there one thing that you think?
I feel like this is an opportunity for everyone to refocus their attention in a way about what's important, what's trivial, what are the things we relish in life in a way. Certainly one of the things we miss right now is contact with friends and family. All those kind of things become very important. But I don't know. I guess it's a moment of maybe trying to clear away some of the distractions that everyone has in their life every single day, and really figure out what's important going forward. I mean, I feel like I'm trying to do that, get in touch with, what do I want to be working on? What do I want to be thinking about going forward? And quite frankly, like, do I want, at some point things will open up, and once that happens, do I want to jump right on a plane and go off somewhere in the world, or not, or when will it be safe to do those things? You know, I have, you know, we both have work partners that we work with, and you know, in a way, and I think you have a studio with many people working there. You know, you want to get back to that on some level, but I hope we all go back with a little bit of a renewed sense of purpose to some degree, I guess, with what's important.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm wondering if, because we are both part of an international community, and the art world is very much about going places, meeting people. It's very international, and I for some part, I also feel like it's not 100% right to travel so much, and sometimes but I still have to think about how we can find a way, because we now know how we connect in this type of ways. I think in many situations it works, but in many situations it doesn't work either.
Yeah.
And I really wanna like minimize my traveling, and also I feel, you know, for my physical state of and my mind, it's so much better to not do that all the time and not constantly be forced to only react on everything that comes from the outside, and yeah, that's something I'm thinking of. Like I realize now how much I'm constantly distracted by external input. Wow, I have so many books in my house that I wanted to read for such a long time, music that I want to listen to. Like I've been enjoying these things so much in the last weeks, and they're also very helpful, because we all go, I think, through all states of mind. Like one day you feel great, you wake up, the other day you feel like completely lost, and then you don't know how to deal with it, and you don't know how this is going to end, how to survive, how to keep, you know, how to keep 40 people working and paying them. It's quite a stress sometimes, and other days it's so calm and almost yeah, I don't know, they're almost like religious or something. That it feels so quiet and so beautiful, this world. It's so strange how that shifts constantly.
I feel a little bit like I keep being reminded of earlier years, like in my first years in New York, when I didn't have so many demands on my time, and there was time to just like sit around all morning and read a book that you've been wanting to read, or you know, I've been making drawings again for the first time in a long time, just like sitting for an hour and making a drawing, and there's, I don't know, there's something useful about this moment, you know. There's all these negative aspects of what's going on right now, but I think, you know, and especially as you say, like the economic side of it is a really big stress for I heard someone on the radio this morning saying it's a moment where they should stop all rents, all bills, just like freeze finances until this is over. And in a way, I know there's people out there that, you know, I mean, in America right now, it's quite a scary moment, because there's people protesting and clamoring to open up. And I think tomorrow, the state of Georgia will actually relax their lockdown and let people out again. And it seems crazy to me. A few days ago, there were images on the TV of protesting in Austin, Texas, 300 or 400 people standing next to each other, you know, without masks or anything on. And it seems absurd not to take this with the seriousness that it needs to be taken. And maybe, you know, if Georgia opens up, if Atlanta opens up, and 2 or 3 weeks down the road, 30% of those people get sick again, you know, it might take some sort of a tragedy to push home the fact that this is not a short-term thing, you know. But you were, you know, I've experienced the same thing as you were saying before. If I go out on my normal routes, if I'm on my bicycle, there's way too many people on the paths, and it's kind of surprising. And, you know, summer's coming, you know, people want to be out. So as I've started to go back out again, I ride with a friend of mine often, and we've been just getting lost on routes we never go down, like stray streets and where there's nobody, and you know, finding places to go where we can be outside and be pretty much alone and not bothering anyone and not in contact with anyone. But
and did you discover anything that you had never seen before, and that you were like, wow, normally I'm not really looking at things, or...
Well, I mean, I think in general, that's what's happening right now, whether it's outside the house or inside the house, you know. One thing hanging over my head for the last few months is I had a bunch of different writing projects, essays that I was supposed to have completed months ago, and just kept putting them off and putting the people waiting for them off for one reason or another. And this was a moment to sort of have a little bit of clear space to tackle those things. And I don't know, just to shift gears a little bit. I'm not exactly even certain exactly what it's going to entail. Last night, I actually spent a few hours recording music for the first time since we've been under lockdown. I really didn't want to do any music. You know, I have a new record that came out like a month ago, like a few weeks before we met. And all of a sudden to be in lockdown is kind of the last thing you want in that situation. But so since that's happened, I haven't really picked up an instrument or done anything until the last day or two, when I started to, you know, slowly, tentatively work on some things again, and try and, you know, I think it's about trying to figure out some ways forward right now. I'm not really even sure exactly what it's going to be. I don't even know what I want it to be yet, you know. And
but you can't anticipate on nothing. That's the difficulty right now. Like, are you going to really change everything right now, or, you know, yeah, that is. Yeah, we rely so much on our existing structures. In that way, I think for artists is a very interesting time to figure out how to deal with it. If you're not in the situation right now that you're just really surviving, because a lot of people are really under lots of stress, and there can be so many different situations at the moment, which is also very important to see and to know. But there are also a lot of people, besides all the people that are in great stress and even financial danger or physical danger. I think there are also a lot of people who are not. And I wonder, I hope everyone, not only the people that are not in danger, also the people that are, that everyone has this moment to also now and then try to shift those things and have time to think about it, because it's so important, it's so beautiful also. Somehow, I know this is very hard to say, and I don't want to say anything in negative to other people who are not in that situation, but I think it has never happened before that we are with the entire world kind of in the same situation, country by country. We all deal slightly different with it, but this has never happened before. And
no, it's the first time. It's a global, you know, it's a planetary pause. It's like it's the first time really that this has happened to the entire globe at once. I mean, it's like we're living in a science fiction moment in a way. And you know, the scary thing to me is, I feel like these are the wars we're going to fight in the 21st century, that this is just the tip of an iceberg. This is going to go away, but it's not going to be an isolated incident. I think this kind of thing is going to happen again. And, you know, in part, it's about the fact that people are jetting all over the world all the time and transferring these different diseases and things. I really, the thing that struck me the most at first was that, you know, it started maybe in China, if that's the case, and the Chinese government sort of was in denial for as long as they could be before they decided to act on it. And then, like, one by one, that exact same scenario happened in country after country. Our president said, well, it's just a couple people, you know, it's going to go away by the summer. And like everyone denied it as long as possible. And it seems like a moment to me. I mean, I was kind of thinking really far out and hypothetically, it's a moment when nationalism is the enemy in a sense, because governments are trying to protect their economy and all this other stuff, when it's really a moment when there almost needs to be a global oversight over things like this. You know, if there were people just looking at the globe in terms of the global health, you would act one way, and it would, you know, if you weren't thinking about economic constraints or things like that. And this is a case where, you know, certain things should have been done that just weren't done, and it's still happening. You know, I have a lot of friends in South America and in Brazil and in Chile and places, and their governments are denying it, and it's slowly building down there. And this, you know, that curve is just, you know, a few weeks behind us, or whatever it is, you know. And I don't know, it seems really a moment when nationalism comes up against its failings in a way.
Yeah.
You know,
I think that is that's probably the most important thing that we have to deal with and have to learn here, is how can we deal with this globally? And because the next thing that's coming up is climate change. Well, it's not the next thing, it's already there, but this is now more urgent. But we have to learn from, because also in that problem is so much bigger, and that if we're not going to solve that as a total globe and keep on trying to use these disasters for political gain or power play, I think it's yeah, it shouldn't be accepted. I've been thinking all the time, how can we create a situation that we can actually, with the technology they have nowadays, get the real, what people really want, not like polls that are taken by people where they take, I don't know, they measure it in a way that it's not really real information. How do we get real information? That's also, that is the most important, I have the feeling.
Well, in a way, all the like the climate measurements that have been going on during this time, you know, noticing that the air quality is better, you know, all this stuff. This is real information, you know. 4 weeks of a pause, and the earth is happier. The climate is improving. I mean, it's a constant struggle between different sides who have different desires. I mean, it's an endless fight in a way. You know, it's frustrating to see it so clearly and feel like some people don't see these things that clearly. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very frustrating.
Here's
yeah.
Teacup.
Oh, who's that?
That's Teacup.
Tika.
Oh, she doesn't want to be on camera anymore than that.
She wants to be private.
So you have your practice is mostly like, where do you do your work? Do you mostly go, like, I can't go to my studio right now. I have a painting studio and a recording studio across the river in Hoboken, and there's no way for me to go there right now. So I'm kind of reduced to what I can do in the apartment here. And you know, the funny thing for all of us in New York and in places where you're in a big city is, you know, I talk to friends and they have yards to go out into and they can be outside, and it's much harder to do those things when, you know, for people in New York and in big cities where you're locked in small apartments. And this is one reason why people are out roaming around on the streets. But you know, I'm reduced to whatever practice I can get done here in my apartment. And I don't know how it is for you, if you can work from home and kind of continue on with projects that are ongoing, or if it really takes your studio situation to do that.
Well, in our studio, we have a studio in Amsterdam North. It's on the other side of the water, and normally I'm there every day if I'm not traveling. And now I haven't been there for quite a while, but I've been there a couple of times because we had to have a few meetings that had to continue. Also, some projects are still going on, which is great, but you have to make sure they go on, and you have to talk to some clients that and show the progress. And yes, we are very physical makers, so still some people are working in our studio with the distance rule. So, but that means also just a few people can be there at the same time. So everyone who can be at home is at home. I'm surprised how much we can do from home, actually. Yeah, I don't really mind to not be in the studio. Of course, I miss the interaction and the team. I also see that things go maybe sometimes a little bit more efficient right now. But I'm also, yeah, I can still do a lot of work because I have to think a lot and write and decide. And we are working with a bigger team, so also other people work out certain things, and then we meet again and see it. But in the end, you always have to see it physical. You know, if you want to
Yeah.
make decisions, that is the only thing that I can judge. I cannot feel through a screen. That is what's cutting out in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can detect somehow emotion, but half of the time when we're speaking, we're also looking at ourselves. We're not used to that, you know. And now we constantly see yourself, which is very strange. It's also
Yeah.
distracting sometimes in
Yeah.
conversations. It's very
Yeah.
stupid to say that, but I think it's true.
Mm-hmm.
um, and yeah, the things that I judge my work on, and when I decide when it's good enough, it's based on what it physically does to me, how it makes me really feel. And that's yeah, that is impossible in this way. So for that, I need to have the physical interaction with it. And but we try to reduce it to the minimum. A few people in our studio were sick, and that is, of course, was quite worrying. Nobody was tested in the end. I mean, there's not
So
enough
they don't
tests
know if
here.
it was virus or not.
No, only that the doctors said that it looks like it.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it had all the symptoms. So, but at the moment, everyone is healthy, which is very
Mm-hmm.
happy with. And yeah, I just hope, yeah, like everyone, it's a bit needless to say, that this just doesn't take on for another couple of months. But honestly, which is also strange, because now I think
You
it's been,
think it won't?
I don't know.
I have performances in Europe in October that I'm wondering or thinking are just never going to happen at this point. I mean, it's so, you know, some people are predicting 6 months to a year or 2 years. I mean, the predictions are crazy. Um, somehow I cannot see it relaxing in the next month or something like that, you
No,
know?
no. But the strange thing was today I got an invitation to present a project like mid-May in another city. And I was really like, really?
Hmm.
Um, I felt a little bit invaded by it, because I also, now that I get used to this, like suddenly a meeting feels also a bit like, whoa, really? Are we really going to meet? It feels like completely strange to me, actually. And
Yeah.
I wonder if that is a good idea, and if we can start doing this with keeping these distances. But I still think it's not a good idea to spread and to go to other cities, and yeah. So it feels a bit like people are starting to go make their own plans, try to be
Yeah.
safe with their
Yeah.
own
I mean, everybody's
terms.
anxious right now, and some people can't work from home or don't have anything to do at home. I mean, so, you know, I understand that everybody's anxious. I really, I don't know. I think we all have to chill out at the moment as best as we can. I know that's easy to say. That's not easy for everyone to do right now. But I don't know. I mean, I think the longer we can hold off trying to go back to normal, the safer everyone will be when it happens, in a
Yeah.
way, you know. But we'll see when these cities open up what will happen, you know.
What do you
Um,
think? What do you think will happen if this will take another year?
I don't know. Um, I think it might really force some of these issues to be dealt with. About, like, you know, there's people who won't be able to survive. They won't have the funds to last a year without going back to work. So are the governments going to step in? You know, I mean, if ever there was a time for governments to spend their reserves on on their population, this is the moment. I don't know. I mean, I
But
think,
what do you think personally for you? It's a very difficult question. Maybe it's too difficult, but I also
well,
wouldn't know what to answer, honestly.
yeah. I mean, I think, you know, like I said earlier, I think if I knew this was going to go on for 6 months or a year, I would have a more structured regimen to my days.
Yeah.
I'm starting to get there, but for the first weeks, there were days, you know, I was sort of sleeping at odd hours and staying up till 5 in the morning and getting up at noon, and just like, you know, like everything, all structure vanished in a way. And I think I was also sleeping poorly just from having all of this stuff on my mind so much. But I think if someone told me I was going to be in for the next 6 months or a year, I could figure out, I could organize my structure and my life around that. But, you know, we are three people here in our apartment, so it's very hard to find private time to, you know, there's all this is another thing that's been happening, is there's been a lot more phone calls between friends. these Zooms and, you know, all this kind of stuff. So even that, like, it's like if I'm not talking, you know, I'm talking to you, so whoever else is here living now has to kind of shut their doors or you know, sort of put up with a conversation going on in the main room. And if it's not me, it's you know, someone else in the house. And so carving out personal space has been a real issue, you know, and trying to be respectful of each other's personal space as much as possible, and just trying to figure out how to get things done at this point, you know.
Yeah.
Your practice has a lot to do with technology. And, you know, I was before we started today, I was reviewing your website and just looking at some of the different projects. And one thing I love about a lot of the work you guys do is that there's one sense where it's about a very pure idea, you know, the sparrows in the sky at Burning Man, or the winged apparatus making the flight. And I'm curious how much of the time you and Ralph as principals spend on the idea portion of it, or like are you, do you have people doing all the code and you know, helping you figure out all the technical stuff? I assume you have a great team for doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we have a really good team. Also, they're used to be in the dark, basically. With I mean, very often we have an idea and it's quite vague and you can't really put your finger on it. It's a feeling, and you just know when it's right, but you also know when it's not right. And finding that right is basically yeah, we do that. So we do that together, and it goes along with the development of the work. And sometimes during that you have already made prototypes, because we do a lot with motors and moving stuff. Sometimes you have to come to the conclusion that it's not there yet, and then everyone has already been working for months on it, and then things have to change. It's sometimes quite difficult to maybe play that role, but also you have to, because you have to make sure that what you're making is relevant and that's being felt. And that is the only judgment you have. It has to be real, and it has to not just be a nice effect, what you can sometimes create with technology, but over and over again it has to touch you and reach you and be valuable. And that is, I think, important. That is what Ralph and I protect with everything we have. Yeah, for instance, with our projects with at Burning Man with the drones, the performance franchise freedom. Yeah, this we worked together with the developer. Actually, we hired a developer, and he was every day working on the code, and we reviewed every day the output of that. And I said, no, it has to be more like this. I feel it's not like a real swarm. So we constantly go back and forth on things like that. But I'm not physically writing the code. But I understand the principles, and it's basically language. And if you know some of the principles, I guess I could learn, but I don't think at this moment that would be the best thing for me to do. Then also you want to keep then you start also to think sometimes in the limitations that technology have, and we basically want to think outside of those limitations and push that to get out of it what we want, which was actually quite interesting. I was reading reading much more than normally. Normally I only read on holidays, and now I was reading a book, and that was talking about the swarming behavior of groups, and particular birds or bees. And it was a book of a what is the name? And a professor in biology, and he said that in nature, when decisions have to be made, they're usually made by a super big group, and especially when the situation is unknown. So for animals, the situation is always unknown. Like what we are experiencing right now is what animals experience on a daily basis. The whole environment is scary. Nobody knows what to do, and somehow together they find their way and make a decision. And this is also part of their life and of who they are. And we feel like we should be in control and everything is set and we rely on all the structures that we built. And I also have a feeling that it would be helpful if we would learn to be more actually in touch with what life really is, these
Yeah.
insecurities, and dealing with those. I know it's a big thing to ask for, but I think that is what real life should be, a bit more. And I found
Well,
that
this
interesting,
is
that
a moment for
comparison.
that. You know, this is
Yeah,
a moment
yeah,
where everyone, you know, no one's going to work or doing their normal daily routine and really wondering, well, what is the routine? You know, and in a way, it's a time to wonder, what is the routine you want for your life, not what is the routine you have in your life, but what you know, when this all stops, do you want to go back? Do each of us want to go back to what we were doing before in that exact way, or you know, were there some things lacking there that could be, you know, worked on or changed at this moment, you know?
yeah. Do you feel sometimes you're too much under pressure, too much is requested from you and you want to have more time for yourself, or do you feel your life was in balance before this crisis?
Well, I think probably everybody feels like they don't have enough time
Yeah,
in their days, you know, and the pressure. I mean, I don't really feel that I operate under any sort of pressure, but it is good to have deadlines and things kind of looming in front of you to spur you to action and to work. Um, at the same time, there are moments when you feel like, well, there's just too many things going on, too many people, too many requests for you know, people to talk to, or whatever it is. You know, this moment of pulling back like this has been really interesting because uh, there's been more quiet time than normal, and so there's been more time to think, and I really think, like I said before, I feel similar feelings to when I first sort of left school and moved to New York, and you know, you had a lot of time on your hands. You weren't anybody. You were just, you know, kind of doing some things, and there was the days could stretch forever in a way that they don't anymore because there's so many things to do every day, and you know, people's needs and desires or whatever it is, and um, so I'm kind of relishing that moment, and I've been kind of going back through. One thing I've been doing during this period is I was set up just before everything shut down with a high-tech negative scanner. So I've been scanning all these old negatives from like 30 years ago, and looking at all these pictures and kind of remembering different periods that have kind of been swept along in the tide of the stream in a way, and just kind of getting back in touch with maybe an idea of who I was and what my desires were at these different points in life, and seeing how they correspond and correlate to where I am now and what I have now. And it, I mean, I think it's just been a moment for contemplation more than anything
do
else.
you want to share that, what you were thinking when you were 18,
Well,
or is
I
that
think
too?
it's more just the fact that at that point there were moments where you had a really great freedom. You know, you really felt like um, there was so much potential stretching out in front of you, and so little was defined. And I think this is what happens as we go through our lives and age. More things are defined, and there's more. I don't know how to call it except to say there's, as we go on, there's more. You know, we have more opportunities, but there's also a lot more demands on us, you know, whether it's the demand to pay for your apartment, or you know, whatever it is. There's just all these demands hanging over everyone's head that take your time and your attention, whereas when you were younger, you really didn't have uh, that many things to focus on, so you could kind of be more free flowing in a way, you know. You could I don't know, I don't know
Yeah.
exactly what it is, but
Yeah, no, it's also the excitement that everything can still be, and now the
yeah,
longer you're going on, the more defined your path is, and the more you have defined it yourself, and also leaves you maybe less free to sometimes try something completely different because you have
sure.
created demands in a certain direction, and
Sure, you've
yeah,
gone down a road far enough that to back up to the last fork would take way too much time and energy. It's partly about examining the choices one has made. I mean, I think this is maybe one of the interesting things about just moving through life and aging is
yeah,
that you get to see the choices you made, and like right now everybody's stopped, so we have a moment to examine the choices we've made and say, like, am I in the place I want to be right now, given all the work we've done to this moment? Are we where we want to be with what we want to see in front of us? I mean, um, it's interesting to
yeah.
contemplate at the very least, I guess.
I have one last question. Just could you see yourself in a complete different profession for the rest of your life, also being happy?
Well, I guess it would depend on what the profession was.
Well, yeah. Is there
um,
something you could picture that you think you would, for instance?
well, there probably are, there probably are. There's different, I don't know. I mean, I feel like I took a very circuitous route to where I ended up, and um, when you're a young person, you're never really sort of educated by the people, by your teachers and whatnot, to think that, to be an artist is one of these things that's outside of society on some level. You're not, I was a good student, so, I was kind of geared towards being being a scientist or being, something like that, and you're not, I don't really feel like it's too easy to be offered when you're a young person, the idea that, well, you could spend your life trying to do creative things instead of getting a normal job, and, not taking, you could spend your life in a more risky way rather than in a way that's kind of programmed in a sense, and um, so I could imagine doing some different things, but I don't know. I can't imagine at this moment not being someone who was dealing with creative aspects, to some degree or other. To feel like what you're doing has a fulfilling energy for your life seems most important at this point. I actually know and have been back in touch recently with a few people that I was friends with, when I was in high school and when I was a teenager, and they were very talented in creative ways, but they were too fearful of making the leap to try and allow that to happen. And they plugged themselves into more sort of standardized jobs, and they've always felt a bit of regret through their whole life, about like, well, I really wanted to do this, but but without maybe admitting that it was a fearful thing, but just they were not able to let themselves take that risk, to jump off that cliff or whatever you want to call it. And they've felt a regret through their whole life from that, and um, I certainly would say that I'm not in that category, that, for better or worse, wherever I am, I feel like I took these opportunities without really worrying so much about, oh, how am I going to support my family, or whatever those concerns are you have when you're in your 20s and you're looking at your future, like, oh, I need a good job so I have money to go out to restaurants, or, whatever it is, um, when we started, we were only thinking about the creative process was foremost, and it was the uppermost thing that we were worried about, and we were willing to live in shitty apartments, or whatever, not have health insurance, whatever it might have been, take crappy jobs in order to spend as much time as possible doing creative work. And it's I don't know, I don't know what else would have happened, really. There was, even moving to New York was kind of just a happenstance. It wasn't a plan for me. It was more, I was playing with a couple of friends in a band, and the idea was after college, like, what are we going to do? Let's move to New York and try and play at CBGB's or at Max's or whatever it is. And you know, it just I didn't have a real plan of attack and action, and in that way, I was opportunities came to me in a sense that might have been cut off if I had been more more desirous of structuring my life in a really serious way.
Yeah.
What about you? What would you be doing if not
Well,
this?
I'm thinking about that sometimes because of course, I really love what I do, which is very great.
You were talking about collecting dandelions. You said, "Oh, we go out every day and collect dandelions."
Yeah, well, I was out also yesterday collecting dandelions because we make sculptures with dandelions, real dandelions.
I was looking at them today and looking at them and wondering if I was trying to see if they were still available online. Those little ones with just the battery, the light, but with the real dandelion.
Definitely. And this is the time right now in the Netherlands. This is the time to collect. So we are collecting at the moment. And so, but what I would love to also do, if I had more time, I would also, besides what I'm doing right now, I would love to have a garden where I would grow all sorts of plants and try out like natural medicines and things like that. That's something that just interests me a lot. I know a lot about plants. My mom taught me a lot in the past, and I still have that knowledge. I know so many plants and what you can eat and stuff like that. And every year we're collecting dandelions in the fields, and people are always wondering what you're doing, you know, because you're just standing next to the road and picking stuff, and people just think it's strange. And I also love that strangeness. I love to go to those places where people don't go, where other people don't see, and look at those structures. I can get endless inspiration from that. So I would love to see. I love seeing things growing and changing and adapting, and that is something I miss a bit in my house. And in Amsterdam, I don't have even a balcony. I don't have an outside. So that is something I've been thinking a lot lately. Well, already for a longer time, but now especially when you're more locked up in your house, like, oh, I miss this outside and daily connection with nature, and not with just going on a walk, but with nature you have a connection with, that you see, that you follow. One of the beautiful things I found in the last days, or weeks actually, was that I realized that every night at a certain time a group of crows is flying the same circles, as if they're all waiting for each other, and they all go in. And every day it's around 8 o'clock before sunset, and this sort of connection with a place, that you start to get to know the animals, the plants, and the particularities. That is what I would love to explore more, and that relationship that you can have with that.
You know, it's funny because when I was in college, the other real viable option for me was to be a botanist. I was really seriously into it, and living in New York for as long as I have, not having a garden, which I always had growing up and was really interested in that, and growing plants and things. It's one of the biggest regrets, in a way, of not being able to grow things like that, or to have a property, you know, to see things grow over many years, like to see trees evolve or something like that. There was definitely a moment when, before I really threw my lot in with you know, studying art as a serious endeavor, where I was going to be a botanist. I mean, I was very good at it, and I was really interested in it. But I had already at that point decided to become an artist. But it's something that's really super interesting to me, and growing things like that. One thing I love, and this is always something that I'm really aware of when I'm in Europe, is I love those pollarded. The word for it is pollarding. What they do to trees, where they cut off all the branches, and then it becomes this gnarled, like, nub, and these little thin branches come out, and it has that beautiful shape. You see it a lot in the lowlands in particular, but all through Europe more so than here. And like the idea of living somewhere where you could sort of almost sculpt these trees over many years and see them grow and like trim them, and you know, it's definitely a big regret of living in New York, is not having that kind of a situation.
Yeah, yeah.
That kind of connection with nature, and growing your own food is an amazing thing to be able to do.
Yeah.
You know,
especially when you have a little bit more time and being at home, then these things feel so real and important. Also.
Yeah. It's also can be like tending your garden. It's kind of a centering thing. Like, what do you do to relax from work? What are your hobbies, or your the things you do to just relax?
Oh, these sort of conversations.
I am a
Work.
cyclist, so one of my main things is going out on the bike and just like doing that hour or 2 hour meditation, just sort of almost turning off it a little bit and just being physical and moving through space in a way, and maybe having time to think about things or whatever. But this is, I just wonder if those activities if people are finding themselves more in touch with those activities now, or not.
Do you? I don't.
I guess so. The one thing I've been feeling in the last week or two is I feel less physically active. I feel like I'm sitting around in my apartment a lot more, looking at a computer screen or a phone, and it really shook me a couple of days ago. I felt like I need to have some physical activity. My body's just going to atrophy if I just sit in a chair and sit at the table or cook food or whatever. A tangent. One of the great things about being home is we've been really cooking a lot and making beautiful dinners and things like that. And that's something we almost never invest as much time in as we have been of late, which is kind of nice.
Yeah. Hey, Lee, we're already almost an hour.
Okay, so we should. Oh, we're going to get cut off by.
We're going to get
cut
off soon.
Minutes.
Yeah.
It's been great talking to you.
Yeah, really nice, really nice. And yeah, I hope you and everyone is going to be fine. And well, I wonder what this conversation would be in a couple of months from now. Maybe we should repeat it.
Maybe we'll revisit it and see where we've come to. I hope at some point, I had an amazing afternoon working with your ego sculpture, if you call it a sculpture, in the gallery space. And I finally, we did some tech rehearsal, and then for a couple hours after everybody left, I just was in there playing, and kind of the sculpture is moving in the space, and I was moving with the sculpture, and it was really great. And I just kept feeling like, okay, this is just a practice, like this is just the beginning of something. So I hope somewhere down the line, I know that you guys do a lot of, you use a lot of music in your presentations.
Yeah.
And I'm always interested in the music for the Burning Man drones piece with the guy playing the piano. A Dutch friend of mine said he's very well known.
Yeah,
but I love the way you use the music in the pieces, and I hope we have a chance to do something together down the line.
Me too. I was so curious what our collaboration would end up with. So yeah, hopefully we get that chance. That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's almost 12 o'clock in Amsterdam. So I'm gonna cheers with you.
Okay, same here.
And
cheers. Thanks everybody for tuning in and listening.
Yeah, thank you all.
Great to speak to you. We'll stay in touch.
Okay, stay in touch.
Okay.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.